Sometimes life places a message in front of you, not by coincidence, not by chance, but because something inside you has already begun. You're seeing this because your spirit is rising, even if you don't feel it yet, even if everything around you still looks uncertain. When the soul prepares for a comeback, the world whispers before it shouts. And today, you're hearing that whisper. Every great transformation begins quietly. It doesn't announce itself with comfort. It announces itself through restlessness, through discomfort, through moments where you feel torn between who you were and who you are becoming. When you feel these internal earthquakes, remember, the ground only shakes before something powerful emerges. Your spirit is not breaking, it's breaking open. You've carried wounds, disappointments, and betrayals that you never asked for. You've survived storms that could have ended you, but instead of destroying you, they uncovered a deeper layer of you, a stronger, wiser, more awakened version. The very pain you thought was weakening you has been carving out the space needed for your next rise. Because before a comeback, life tests the foundation. Before a breakthrough, the old identity collapses. Before everything changes, you are asked to let go of what no longer fits the future you're stepping into. The truth is, you didn't lose anything that was meant for the next chapter. What left your life only cleared the path for alignment. What fell apart was simply what your spirit had outgrown. And even the people who walked away were part of the preparation, not because you were unworthy, but because your comeback required a different environment, a different energy, a different strength. Your spirit knows what your mind is just beginning to understand. You are not returning to who you were. You are rising into who you were always meant to be. And every challenge you faced has been refining you for this moment. When you felt alone, you learned self-trust. When you were misunderstood, you learned inner clarity. When you were underestimated, you learned your true power. When life forced you to your knees, you learned how to rise without anyone's permission. That is why this comeback will not look like your previous victories. It will be deeper, higher, and more aligned. This time, you're not rising from ego. You're rising from truth. You're rising from experience. You're rising from the inner world that has been reshaped by your battles. And here's the most important part. Comebacks are not triggered by external opportunity. They begin with internal awakening. The moment you feel something shifting inside you, your thoughts, your intuition, your energy, the comeback has already started. This is why you're seeing this now, because your spirit is signaling you. Get ready. What's coming will justify everything you had to survive. The version of you that is emerging will not fear loss, because they've already lived through it. They will not fear uncertainty, because they've risen from it. They will not fear judgment, because they've learned to listen to their inner voice above all others. You are not stepping into a small victory or a partial comeback. You are stepping into a transformation that changes your direction, your identity, your destiny. Life is preparing to return everything you lost but upgraded. Life is preparing to align you with people who understand you, not just tolerate you. Life is preparing to open doors that were once locked, because now you are ready to walk through them. Your spirit rising is the sign. Your intuition awakening is the sign. You arriving at this message is the sign. Your comeback is not coming someday. It has already begun. There are moments in life when you feel as though the ground beneath you is disappearing, when the circumstances surrounding you grow so heavy that they threaten to collapse everything you once believed you could handle. These moments often feel like the breaking point, the place where you think you have nothing left to give. But what most people don't realize is that these are also the exact moments when the unseen forces within you begin to awaken. When life pushes you to the edge, something ancient, instinctive, and powerful inside you rises to meet the pressure. This awakening is not loud or dramatic at first. It begins quietly, a shift in awareness, a subtle change in perception, a new sense of clarity that starts to form deep within. The edge forces you to confront things you've ignored. It strips away distractions, illusions, and unnecessary attachments. When everything is comfortable, you have the luxury of avoiding your deeper self. But when life becomes difficult, the psyche pulls forward the parts of you that you have kept hidden, resilience you did not know you possessed, courage you never exercised, patience you didn't know could stretch so far. The edge becomes a mirror reflecting your most authentic capacity. It shows you not just who you are, but who you could become. It is in these intense moments that your inner instincts, those primal and intuitive forces, begin to speak louder. You sense truths you never noticed before. You feel energies that seem to guide you toward choices you wouldn't have considered when you were comfortable. There is an intelligence within you that awakens only under pressure, a force that understands survival, transformation, and renewal more deeply than your rational mind ever could. When you are pushed to your limits, your spirit begins to operate on a different level. It starts activating dormant strengths, unlocking hidden endurance, and revealing the deeper layers of your character. Many people misunderstand the edge as a place of danger, but in reality, it is a place of spiritual clarity. It is the threshold between who you used to be and who you are capable of becoming. When you are at the edge, you can no longer pretend. You can no longer hide behind excuses, masks, or borrowed identities. The truth emerges in its rawest form. This truth may feel uncomfortable, but it is liberating. It is the kind of truth that awakens the unseen forces, because you are finally in a place where you must face yourself honestly. The unseen forces are not external. They are the silent powers that have always been part of you, but were never activated. When life pushes you to the edge, your inner world begins to reorganize itself. Old beliefs crumble, outdated fears dissolve. Your priorities shift. You begin to see what truly matters. You develop a deeper sense of connection with your intuition, your instincts, and your emotional intelligence. These forces guide you toward growth rather than collapse. They push you to evolve rather than surrender. It is often in these moments of deep pressure that people discover their purpose. The edge strips away the noise of the world, leaving only what is essential. When you have nothing left to lose, your true desires and values rise to the surface. You stop trying to fit into molds that were never meant for you. You stop betraying yourself for approval or comfort. You begin to align with what is real, meaningful, and aligned with your inner calling. The edge also awakens emotional depth. You learn to feel more intensely, to understand your own heart in ways you never previously explored. You recognize your emotional wounds not as weaknesses, but as portals to deeper wisdom. Pain becomes a teacher, fear becomes a guide, uncertainty becomes a catalyst. These emotions no longer control you. Instead, they empower you. They fuel your transformation by showing you the areas that need healing and the strengths that need expression. This awakening is not temporary. Once these unseen forces rise, they do not return to sleep. They reshape you. They fortify your identity, strengthen your psyche, and deepen your resilience. You begin to trust yourself in ways you never could before. You carry the memory of your strength. You carry the awareness of your depth. And perhaps most importantly, you carry the understanding that the edge was not there to break you, but to reveal you. Your shadow reveals the parts of you that are ready to rise, not the parts that are meant to shame you. Most people spend their entire lives running from their shadow, believing it to be the dark, unacceptable side of themselves. But the shadow is not your enemy. It is the unconscious container of every emotion, fear, desire, memory, and potential that you have pushed away because the world told you it was too much, too strange, too intense, or too inconvenient. What you call darkness is often just unexpressed strength. What you call flaws are often unlived truths. And when life pushes you toward transformation, the shadow steps forward to show you what you are finally strong enough to face. The shadow appears through triggers, patterns, frustrations, repetitive failures, and emotional reactions that seem to come out of nowhere. It appears when you are ready, not when you feel ready. It brings to the surface the very parts of yourself that need integration before you can rise into your next chapter. People misunderstand the shadow as something negative, but the psyche never brings anything upward without a purpose. Everything that emerges from your shadow carries information, insight about who you are, what you need, what you fear, and what you are capable of becoming. Some of the qualities buried in your shadow are not weaknesses but strengths that were suppressed. Maybe your voice was silenced growing up, so you hid your confidence in the shadow. Maybe you were punished for being emotional, so your sensitivity sank into the dark, waiting for a safer time to resurface. Maybe you were told to be small, quiet, obedient, or predictable, and the boldness, creativity, and power you naturally possessed got pushed into the unconscious. When these hidden parts return, they do not return empty-handed. They arrive with the energy required for your evolution. The shadow often exposes your deepest fears, because fear is one of the greatest indicators of where you need to grow. Fear is a map. Whatever you fear carries meaning. Fear of speaking your truth often signals a voice ready to emerge. Fear of failure often signals a dream waiting to be claimed. Fear of rejection often signals a desire to live more authentically. Fear of change often signals the beginning of transformation. The shadow reveals these fears so you can stop being controlled by them and instead learn from the message they carry. But the shadow also contains your unexpressed desires, the dreams you suppress to survive, belong, or fit into other people's expectations. When these desires rise to the surface, they can feel uncomfortable, even overwhelming, because they challenge the identity you've built. You may feel a pull toward a new path, a new calling, or a new version of yourself that you don't fully understand yet. But this pull is not random. It is your shadow releasing the potential you abandoned, calling you toward expansion. The shadow also reveals emotional wounds that haven't healed, not to break you, but to free you. When old pain comes back, it is because your psyche has decided you are finally capable of healing it. The resurfacing of hurt is not a regression. It is a progression. Pain rises when it's ready to be transformed, not when it wants to torture you. Each wound that comes forward carries a piece of your strength waiting to be reclaimed. Your shadow is the keeper of your authenticity. Every time you push away parts of yourself to be accepted, the shadow absorbs them. Eventually, the cost of abandonment becomes too heavy, and the shadow begins to rise. It pushes you to deal with the truth you've ignored, that you cannot become who you truly are by rejecting half of yourself. Rising requires wholeness, and wholeness cannot be achieved without integrating your shadow. When you start to acknowledge your shadow, you'll notice a shift. The behaviors that once controlled you lose their power. The emotions that once overwhelmed you become teachers. The aspects of yourself you judged become sources of strength. You begin to feel more aligned, more grounded, and more real. You stop living as a fragmented version of yourself and begin becoming the person your spirit originally intended. Your shadow reveals these parts not as a warning, but as an invitation. It asks you to stop running and start integrating, to stop fearing yourself and begin understanding yourself, to stop burying your potential and start embodying it. Everything that rises from your shadow rises because it's time for you to evolve, grow, and step into a more powerful expression of who you are. Every setback is the psyche's way of redirecting you to a deeper purpose, even though it rarely feels that way in the moment. When life blocks your path, when something you fought for slips out of your hands, when plans disintegrate or relationships collapse, the immediate reaction is often confusion, disappointment, or even a sense of personal failure. But beneath those emotions, something meaningful is happening. The psyche, with its ancient intelligence and instinct for growth, uses disruption as a tool. It dismantles what is misaligned so it can guide you toward what is authentic. A setback is never random. It is a psychological course correction, an inner compass shifting your direction towards something you are meant to become. People often cling to their initial plans because they believe that certainty equals security. But the psyche does not care about comfort, it cares about evolution. It understands that if you continue walking a path that drains you, limits you, or does not reflect your true nature, you will eventually collapse under the weight of your own avoidance. So setbacks arise. They interrupt the flow, not to punish you, but to pull your attention towards something you have been ignoring, a deeper calling, a forgotten part of yourself, a truth that has been waiting beneath the surface. When you face a setback, the first instinct is to resist, to push harder, to force the old path to work. But the more you resist, the louder the psyche becomes. You may experience repeated failures, constant emotional friction, or an inner discomfort that grows impossible to silence. This is not bad luck. This is not the universe being cruel. This is your inner world sending signals that the path you're on is too small for the person you're becoming. The psyche does not allow you to remain in spaces that limit your potential. Setbacks reveal what is unsustainable. They make you question your motivations. They force you to confront whether you were chasing something out of fear, pressure, or imitation. Many people pursue goals that were never theirs to begin with, goals shaped by society, family expectations, or the need for approval. When these goals collapse, it feels like the world is falling apart. But in truth, what is falling apart is the illusion that kept you trapped. The psyche removes what is false to make room for what is real. The setback also slows you down long enough to see what you missed. When life is smooth, you don't always look inward. You don't question the environment, the relationships, the choices, or the identity you're maintaining. But the moment everything stops working, you are forced to look at what you've been avoiding. You begin to notice the misalignments you tolerated. You see the compromises you made against your own values. You recognize the parts of yourself you silenced to fit into a life that did not nourish you. Setbacks bring clarity by stripping away comfort. Sometimes setbacks occur because you have outgrown the space you were operating in. You may not realize it yet, but your spirit does. The psyche senses your growth long before your conscious mind does. It feels when you are expanding beyond your current environment, and it disrupts that environment so you can move. What you interpret as loss is often a push toward a larger field of possibility. What you interpret as failure is sometimes the doorway to your next level of identity. Setbacks also test your resilience, not to break you, but to strengthen the psychological muscles required for your deeper purpose. You cannot fulfill a meaningful calling with fragile self-belief. You cannot carry a powerful destiny with a weak inner foundation. The very obstacles that frustrate you are forging you into someone capable of handling greater responsibility, deeper wisdom, and higher levels of self-awareness. The psyche knows exactly what strengths must be awakened before you can rise into your next chapter, and setbacks trigger those strengths into development. What appears as a closed door may actually be protection. The psyche often redirects you away from situations that would ultimately diminish you. You may think you lost something valuable, but the deeper truth is that you are being shielded from something that would have drained your energy, stunted your growth, or pulled you away from your authentic path. The setback is a boundary drawn by your inner self, saying, not this, not here, not anymore. Eventually, you begin to see the pattern. The things that fall apart were never aligned with your deeper purpose. The things that survive difficulty are the things that are truly meant for your evolution. And the things that enter your life after a setback are the ones that match the person you are becoming, not the person you were before the fall. Transformation happens the moment you stop fighting who you were and step into who you're becoming, because real change doesn't begin with action, it begins with acceptance. Most people believe transformation is about force, discipline, or dramatic choices. But the deeper truth is that inner evolution starts the moment you stop waging war against your past self. So many people stay stuck not because they lack potential, but because they refuse to release the version of themselves they've already outgrown. When you cling to who you used to be, you block the space needed for who you are becoming to emerge. Who you were served a purpose. That version of you learned lessons, survived difficult chapters, endured heartbreak, endured mistakes, and carried you through experiences that shaped your character. But that version was never meant to be permanent. The psyche grows in cycles. It sheds identities, beliefs, and patterns the same way nature sheds seasons. What once fit you perfectly eventually becomes too small. And yet, the mind often resists this shift because familiarity feels safe, even when it's limiting. The inner battle begins when your spirit tries to evolve, but your ego tries to hold on. The moment you stop fighting who you were, you are no longer trapped in the past. You stop replaying old mistakes. You stop punishing yourself for what you didn't know at the time. You stop defining yourself by outdated stories. Self-judgment dissolves into understanding. Shame melts into self-compassion. The past stops being a prison and becomes a teacher instead. This acceptance doesn't mean approving of everything that happened. It means acknowledging that the old version of you was doing the best it could with the awareness it had. Transformation requires this gentle honesty. Stepping into who you're becoming requires courage, because it means walking into the unknown. The future self is unfamiliar. There are qualities within you that you haven't expressed yet. There is strength you haven't used, wisdom you haven't applied, and a voice you haven't spoken with. Becoming someone new requires letting go of the identity that protected you in previous chapters. Maybe you survived by staying quiet, staying small, staying agreeable, staying hidden, staying tough, or staying numb. But survival identities are not meant to guide your evolution. They were tools for a moment in your life, not lifelong companions. The becoming process starts when you begin to feel an internal pull towards something, more honesty, more courage, more purpose, more authenticity. This pull often begins subtly. You feel restless with environments that once felt comfortable. You lose interest in conversations that once entertained you. You sense a quiet dissatisfaction with habits you used to accept. You begin to crave depth, meaning, and alignment. These are not random feelings. They are signs that your inner identity is shifting, preparing you for expansion. Transformation deepens when you stop forcing yourself to maintain behaviors that no longer match your spirit. You stop pretending. You stop over-explaining. You stop choosing peace at the expense of your well-being. You stop dimming your light. You stop tolerating what drains you. Every time you let go of something that belongs to your old self, you create space for something that belongs to your future self. This is the inner alchemy of transformation, the gradual exchange of outdated energy for aligned energy. The moment you step into who you're becoming, life begins to rearrange around your new identity. Opportunities that once felt out of reach begin to appear. Relationships shift. Your environment evolves. The people who resonate with your new frequency start to enter your life, and those who align with your old patterns drift away. This is not loss, it is alignment. As you rise into a more authentic version of yourself, the world mirrors your growth. Transformation also means embracing responsibility for your own evolution. You stop waiting for someone to fix you, validate you, or give you permission. You stop expecting external circumstances to change before you do. You begin to realize that inner change creates outer change, not the other way around. You move from reacting to life into shaping your life. This shift in power is one of the clearest signs that you are stepping into who you're meant to be. And as you step into your becoming, you begin to feel a quiet certainty, not loud confidence, but rooted clarity. You understand what aligns with your soul and what violates it. You make decisions from self-respect rather than self-doubt. You begin to trust your intuition more than your fear. You stop seeking approval from others because you've learned to approve of yourself. The inner conflict fades because you are no longer split between past and future. You are unified with your present becoming. Transformation happens not at the finish line, but in the moment you stop fighting your evolution and allow the next version of yourself to rise through you. Your rising spirit always announces itself before results appear, long before anything in your external world begins to shift. This is one of the most subtle but powerful truths about personal transformation. People often believe change begins when circumstances change, when a new opportunity arrives, when a breakthrough happens, when progress becomes visible. But the truth is that all transformation begins internally. Before anything improves on the outside, something awakens on the inside. Your spirit rises first. Your energy shifts first. Your mindset expands first. The results you seek are only the final reflection of changes that happened quietly, invisibly, deep within your psyche. The rising spirit does not announce itself with loud signs or dramatic events. It begins as a whisper, a new thought, a sudden clarity, an unexpected burst of motivation, a feeling that you are meant for more than the life you've been settling for. You may not even recognize it at first. You may mistake it for restlessness or confusion. But beneath that discomfort is the beginning of awakening. It is the inner self signaling that the time has come to evolve, to expand, to step into a more aligned version of your life. Before results appear, your internal world begins reorganizing itself. Old beliefs that once controlled you start to lose their power. Habits you used to cling to feel less satisfying. Relationships that drained you become harder to tolerate. You feel drawn toward new ideas, new environments, new behaviors. This is not random. It is the psyche shifting into alignment with your higher potential. It is the rising spirit preparing you for changes that your conscious mind may not yet understand. A rising spirit brings subtle emotional changes as well. You begin to feel more sensitive to what is no longer aligned. You feel more connected to the parts of yourself you ignored. You feel an internal pull, not loud, not forceful, but steady and persistent, guiding you toward growth. Even when you're unsure of what's happening, you can sense that something within you is expanding. You may feel a new kind of courage stirring, a desire to act, to improve, to confront, or to release. This inner stirring is the announcement of transformation before any external success appears. You might also notice moments of unexpected clarity. Situations that once confused you suddenly make sense. Patterns you tolerated for years become obvious. Life lessons that felt painful now reveal their meaning. This clarity is part of the rising spirit. It sharpens your perception so you can navigate your next chapter with awareness instead of fear. Even if nothing has changed around you, you begin to see that you are changing within. Another sign of a rising spirit is the shift in your self-talk. The inner critic grows weaker. The old doubts sound outdated. A new voice begins to emerge, one that is quieter but stronger, one that encourages instead of discourages, one that believes in possibilities instead of limitations. You may find yourself thinking thoughts you never allowed yourself to think before. You may feel a sense of worthiness growing inside you, even if you can't explain it. This internal voice is the first spark of transformation announcing itself. Your rising spirit also shows itself through discomfort. Many people misunderstand this part. They think discomfort means something is wrong, but often discomfort is the sign that your old identity is being stretched. You're becoming too big for your past self. The life you've been living begins to feel tight, restrictive, or outdated. You may feel like you're in transition, suspended between who you were and who you're becoming. This inner tension is not a setback, it is the early stage of growth. It is the spirit signaling that you cannot remain where you are. Before results appear, you also begin to make small shifts in behavior. You set boundaries more firmly. You say no more confidently. You choose environments that elevate you instead of drain you. You focus on what matters instead of what distracts you. These small shifts may not appear significant to others, but they are powerful indicators that your spirit is rising. They show that your internal world is already preparing for the external changes you seek. Even your desires shift. You no longer crave the things you used to chase. You no longer care for the approval you once depended on. You begin to pursue meaning, authenticity, and purpose. This shift in desire is one of the clearest announcements of an evolving spirit, because desire shapes direction long before results manifest. And as these inner changes accumulate, something inside you begins to feel inevitable, not because you see evidence, but because you feel aligned, you feel prepared, you feel connected to a deeper part of yourself. You sense that your life is moving toward a new chapter, even if nothing outwardly confirms it yet. Your rising spirit always announces itself before results appear, because the inner transformation must come first. Results are simply the echo of the inner shift that already happened within you.